going live, mate. First time in a while. First time in a while, mate. I hate all these rats. These rat dogs. Oi, if I have back to Aston's Discord, eh? Picture on top, what? Invite me back to Aston plays. Invite back to Aston's Discord. Send me invite. Got a kid close up in his room. Invite him back to the Discord. Aston's Discord. There, I'll have a look. Thank you. If they kick me again, just keep inviting me, eh? Yeah, I was kicked.
Hello and welcome! You're watching Season 5 of the FNCS, or the Fortnite Champion Series for Oceania, presented by the Australian Open. My name is Vandy, I'll be your host for today, and I'm joined by my amazing analysts. We've got Fallout as well as Timmy. Guys, it's finals week, it's happening.
This can't always
We've officially made it! How are you feeling about it?
We're finally here, the best of the best in Oceania, and to celebrate, Timmy and I had to bust out the party shirts for Friday here. It's Party Shirt Friday, it's Oceania Finals Friday, and I am so excited. Timmy, how you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling really good. I got my party shirt on, like you said, ready to watch some really good Fortnite today.
I'm really glad to hear that because, guys, it's been 4 amazing weeks of action. Last week we had, of course, the semi-finals over 2 days, and, of course, today we'll be bringing the finals over 2 days. But I'm not going to steal away from your explanation for that. This is to bring everyone up to speed. Perhaps you're just joining us for the first time. Perhaps you've been with us the entire ride. But let's explain how the tournament has been structured so far and how did we get here to the finals itself.
Absolutely, Vandy. It's been a long road to get here, and we'll pull up a graphic that'll help explain it all. So it was a first off 3 qualifiers in weeks 1 through 3 to kick it off. Each qualifier featured 4 rounds, which is one more last than last FNCS. As a result of those qualifiers, which by the way were open to anyone that were able to qualify through or make it to Champions Within Arena, top 132 teams qualified for the semifinals, which was a 2-day affair with 4 separate heats, heats 1 through 4. As a result of that, the top 8 from each heat qualified through to the finals. 9th through 16th got placed in a reboot round, which was so much fun to watch. And of course, in the end, it was Bluesy, Lazy, and Reckless that pulled it out of nowhere. Congratulations to them. We'll be seeing them compete today. And that leads into our grand finals starting today, which is a 2-day affair as well. However, a little bit different. 6 games per day for a 12-game cumulative final. Points will carry over until tomorrow. It's going to be an insane grand final. Consistency and stamina are going to be key to crown our Chapter 2 Season 5 FNCS champions, Vandy.
Thank you so much, Fallout. Exactly right. And points is something really important to touch on because we used the exact same scoring from the beginning of the tournament, and we're not changing anything for the grand finals. Timmy, take us through exactly how the scoring has worked for, again, anyone just joining us, or if anyone needs just a little bit of a refresher.
Yeah, sure. So as Fallout said, it's all about the consistency over these next 2 days. So what we're going to want to see is a range of play styles that get rewarded. So as you see there on the top left, 30 points for the win for the Victory Royale. But as you go down the list, 25 points for second, 20 points for third, 14 for fourth. So what that means is it's really top heavy. Most of the points get distributed in that top 3 to 4 range. But to offset that, these guys are offering 2 points per elim. And now that's a really important point because it means that if you're not playing on height, which is really dominant this season, and you're playing through mid-ground where elims are easy to come by, you're going to get rewarded for those elims. 2 points is a lot of points for an elim. So like I said, we're going to see a range of play styles rewarded, but it's all about consistency, like Fallout said, Vandy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Timmy. Exactly right. And we've seen such different play styles kind of come through. We've also seen where the mid-game can become so much more important if you are able to pick up those eliminations and kind of prime yourself to then try and push for height. So there's been lots of different tactics coming out through, and it's been really wonderful to see. Fallout, of course, now, this is going to be the carrot, of course, that we've been dangling over the last few weeks, prizes. Now, of course, they really do come into play. Let's remind everybody what the prize pool is.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to talk about the different play styles and different teams here in a moment. But first things first, what's at stake? A significant prize pool. That's at stake. $90,000 in U.S. dollars, which, of course, is around 115 to 120 Australian dollars. 22 grand for first place. Our winning championship team will walk home with 22 grand this weekend. Insane to think about. 15 grand for second, 9 grand for third, all the way down to 11th through 15th, who will walk home with $900 dues. They won't go home empty-handed either. And keep in mind, the prize pool has been accumulated throughout the entire tournament for this day today. And, of course, tomorrow, the grand finals. This is where it all matters. I love the fact, we've been saying it every week, but I'll say it again. I love the fact that this feels like an S-tier event. This feels like a major, and you have to qualify. You have to go big when it matters the most, which is in the grand finals, to be able to take home a significant or part of that lion's share of that prize pool, Vandy.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. This is the carrot that we've been dangling in front of the players, and now it all becomes real. Roughly about half of these players competing today and tomorrow will be walking away with some cash in their back pocket. So it's really, really cool to see them all vie for that because, as I said, it's been about 4 weeks, so we've kind of built up to this stage. Now, of course, we need to remind everybody about the heats that we had last week. So as I kind of touched on last week, we had semifinals 1 and 2 over Saturday and Sunday. But let's just go ahead and refresh everyone. We're going to actually just do the top 5 from each heat. And Alice, I'm going to borrow your brains. Timmy, why don't you get us started with Heat A and just recap the results?
Yeah, sure. So Heat A saw one of the more dominant performances of the weekend as we go through. Sorif, Sync, and Volks winning by more than 60 points with 2 Victory Royales and 41 elims. A dominant performance from these guys, but not the only team of note on this list, although these are one of my favourites. We've got Danith Osiris and Skits in second there. Suns, Tui and Cork in third, Shocker Midnight and Tekma, and then Peaky, Box, and Seldom rounding out the top 5 for Heat A Fallout.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, you mentioned it. Soref, Volks, and Sync, I think, are a team you're going to have to keep an eye out for today. Moving on to Heat B. This was the most stacked heat that we had, hands down, bar none. Was an insane one to watch. Muzzlooter and Speedy took it home, which actually begs the question between Muzzlooter and Speedy, Jinx, Alec, Worthy. Those are kind of the top two Titans coming into the tournament. Who we think are going to win it. I'm excited to talk about that in the predictions a little bit later. But you can't sleep on Basil, Vortex, and Jace as well. I was very impressed. In my eyes, the most entertaining team to watch with how aggro they played. So, very, very aggressive in the late game, always playing mid-ground, playing for kill or eliminations. It was awesome to watch. Raptor, Prizzy, and Oatly in fourth, and then Voicich, Mania, and Trexy, a team we maybe didn't necessarily expect to get fifth place. Very, very impressed from them. One thing to also keep in mind, Fresh, Rel, and Nubatoon took home seventh place, and then, of course, we had Zora, Jalen, and Squeaks right behind him in sixth place, Timmy.
Yeah, definitely, and a really, really good performance from those guys to clutch up on those on that final game to qualify in that top 8. But we didn't really pass over them. Anyway, Heat C. This is one of the weaker heats. And as we see there, the top two teams taking away 5 of the victory royales out of the 6 games. Crazy performance from Crippers Live, Rip and BMP. 175 points, just taking the edge over Bath and Zedox and Sia, who you see there took home 3 wins out of the 6 games. So crazy performance from them. I'm looking to see if they can make something happen today in Grands. Rounding out the top 5, you've got Arrest, Lucas, and Cynical, Me Sport, Soul, and Ice. One of the teams that you wouldn't have expected to see anywhere near the top 5, but those guys made it work. And I'm not too sure if anyone has seen on Twitter, Me Sport, Soul have had to actually come together, and they're playing next to each other today, almost like a LAN setting.
I love it.
Because Soul's had some internet issues. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. And then rounding out our top 5, we've got Brezzo, who was obviously our last AO champion, with Culture and Luna to take top 5 there, Fallout.
Yeah, this was our hands-down most competitive group if you look at the point differentials. But then, of course, we had Heat D to round things out, which was on broadcast. It was Pumpkin, Cyper, and Suns taking home first place quite decisively. I know it doesn't show right there in the stats, but really the first 3 or 4 games, they dominated. They were up by like 80 or 90 or 100 points at some point, and then they kind of coasted to first place. After that, it was Zans, Oreo, and Raikou who looked solid, looked consistent throughout. Mavericks, Machu, and Elusive in third place behind them, and then that user gamer tag right there is Talon, alongside Jedi and Toy Swag in fourth, Will, Ronan, and Eshes in fifth place. And one thing that was interesting about Heat D was not necessarily who qualified, but who didn't qualify. Flexi, Slaya, and Radius not qualifying through. I know there was your pick as well, and Go Egg Scammer and Zalker that didn't make it as well, Timmy.
Yeah. So 2 top teams, they're not making it through. Sad story, didn't quite make it through on the reboot round as well. So yeah, it's sad to not see them in the finals, but where they've missed out, we're going to see 2 new teams come in and hopefully make a name for themselves, Vandy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, guys. Exactly right. So as I said, it was 4 heats full of action. We broadcasted 2 of them. And it just goes to show as well, just looking at the recap of the top 5, the teams that were able to capitalize on not just placement, but as well as eliminations, Timmy, what you keep highlighting, they're the teams that really comfortably anchored themselves towards the top end of the scoreboard. So I'm wondering if that's kind of how this all plays out again. But Fallout, you kind of hinted on this a little bit, predictions. This is actually, it's become one of my favorite parts. So what we actually do is we ask the casters, we ask the analysts for their predictions. Let's go ahead and bring them up. And then, Timmy, I'm going to get you to talk through because you're kind of like the man to beat in terms of predictions. You've been almost flawless.
Yeah, aside from last week, I think I've been pretty decent. But as we said from last week when we were doing Heat B, Muzzlooter and Speedy were my pick for their consistency. Now, across 12 games, which we've got, so we've got tomorrow and then today, we're going to have 12 games that they need to consistently play, and I believe that's where Muzzlooter and Speedy are just going to have it over the other 3 teams that we see on here, Fallout.
Yeah, and I agree. And look, I've been on the Jinx, Worthy, and Alec train the entire tournament. I've really been impressed by them. However, I was more impressed by Muzzlooter and Speedy in Heat B. That stacked Heat, they looked so incredibly sharp, really looked to be in a class of their own, again, in terms of consistency. And actually also well-roundedness. Their ability to play mid-ground in the late game and play for high elims, or their ability to take high ground when it matters. I think they won a game or 2 on high ground as well. They were looking very, very sharp. So that's my pick. And then, of course, Aussie picking Sync, Volks, and Soref, shaking things up a little bit, making it interesting, which I respect, but I would certainly put them in that S tier, that A tier, alongside these other teams on screen, and MDF with Jinx, Worthy, and Alec. Your thoughts on our casters picks, Timmy?
Yeah, well, I put it out on Twitter last night. My predictions, I think any one of these 3 teams, if you pick them to win, I think you've picked someone decent. I can see why anyone will make an argument for any of these 3 teams taking the win today. Sync, Volks, and Soref, dominant Heat 1. and then dominant in week 1 as well. Jinxworthy and Alec, we know their history, we know their pedigree, and then Muzzler and Speedy, one of the best IGLs in the game, with Speedy followed by 2, extremely mechanical players. We know how good they are. It's just whether or not they can put it together on the day. And if I got to be honest, if I don't see one of these 3 teams take the win, I think it's probably a bit of an upset Fallout.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. A very, very good shakeup in terms of predictions in the top teams there, but I'm excited to see what teams like ZX and CO can do, Kripa and Rip, some of our kind of dark horse teams that we wouldn't necessarily expect to put on that list, but they did really well in their heat, so I'm excited to see what they can do, Vandy.
I'm excited too. As you said, these top 3 teams, we've heard their names again and again, week on week. So it's interesting to me because it almost looks as though it's like analysts versus casters. I wonder how Aussie and Monster are going to take it. But let's check in with them. You've heard enough from the analysis desk. You've heard us kind of prime it up for game number 1. We're going to throw it over to you casters as we get ready for match number 1 today.
Welcome, guys. Yes, we have match number 1 almost underway. We have the first day of 2 days for the finals, Monster. We've been building up for weeks to this. We have no prize money up until now to save it for this massive, massive weekend. And yes, Vandy, I mean, we almost kind of had the casters versus analysts. I was talking to Monster how I was probably actually going to pick Jinx, Alec, and Worthy, but I saw no one picked Sync, Volks, and Sorif, and I can't do my boys like that. They look so strong coming into it. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong, but these 3 teams are the favorites, but we've got some big names there, Monster, we're not talking about.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many names here. Obviously, we know we're going to see Repulse show up, right? Even amidst all technical issues, right? Like think about it. We have a 2-day competition here, guys. Everyone is still going to have a chance here. And then, of course, Caster picks aside, Aussie. We saw other big names step up to the plate. I mean, you call players like Sorif coming into this, right? Kind of on lead up. There's a bunch of squads that can pop off here. Yeah, and I mean, OC, as much as we talk about how it's a top-heavy region, a lot of players, again, we've been seeing in the qualifying weeks, they've been maybe not taking it 100% seriously because they know how good they are. But when it comes to the finals, we've had upsets in the past, and I'd love to see a team maybe like Basil, Vortex, Jace really show up and prove that they can be that top 3 or even the victors. Because, I mean, I love going for an underdog, but there's some strong names. And like you said, it's a 12-game format, though. So a lot of us casters, analysts, we're going to pick off consistency because that's what this format is built around. We've looked at it. If you're getting consistent top 3s, you're getting that big chunk of placement. Eliminations are worth 2, and you do that across 12 games. That's what you have to go off. But yeah, I think teams like Basil, Vortex, Jace, who maybe play more of those mid and low ground layers, kind of like Center on NA East, Monster, in a 12-game format, I'm kind of leaning towards, I wouldn't be too surprised if they pull it off because all the big guys are probably going to be going for height. That might not have the consistency they want. And that's the thing. In a final stage, we've seen teams that play for height or play for the win, if you will, every single round, end up clashing against one another, end up throwing each other's games out, and then more often than not, kind of take themselves out of the race because they clash up, and we're expecting that. I mean, listen, I picked the previous FNCS trio champions because you have to have them in this talk, right? Like, there's no way we're not going to throw them up as a prediction because realistically, everyone knows how good that trio is.
Yeah, and I mean, Jinx is currently in the running. He's already the only person in the world with 3 FNCSs under his belt. If he can make it 4, that would be ridiculous. And they have it within grasp. They have a fantastic drop spot. They've had fantastic consistency coming into it. Nothing has changed. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do it. But when we talk about this consistency, I think that's interesting, Monster, because we had this 12-game format last season as well across 2 days. Jinx, Alec, and Worthy didn't actually win either of the days, but they managed to win the tournament overall. And that's why you got to pick teams like that who can be really, really consistent. So teams like Repulse that we know had a phenomenal day 2, picking up 3 of the 6 victory hours because they didn't show up big on day 1. It let them down. But it just shows if they can somehow put it together here today, they could cause the upset as well. So I'm incredibly excited. I mean, we haven't had an FNCS like this, Monster, where no prize money up until now to really make this weekend feel like the premier weekend of Fortnite.
And not only that, we are talking, it's being broadcasted too, right? This is the first for OCE to have this also on the stage, and that's a whole different factor we didn't even really bring into this. The fact that now you're on a stage, now you have the cameras on. You know, the casters are here. Everyone showed up in their, what's they called it? The party suit? The party t-shirts. We're here to play. We're here to party. We're here to watch some gameplay. And for players, this could be a factor that they haven't experienced before.
It is. I mean, it's highlighting play as well. We've seen a lot of stuff we wouldn't normally see. Jinx has previously been streaming all the FNCSs he wins, which is always more hyped. It's more exciting. But a lot of those teams that wouldn't normally have eyes on them, like Repulse's team, like Basil, Vortex, Jace, it does make things different. I wonder if they're feeling the pressure as well. We've already had some big highlight moments across the weeks leading up to this as well. We've had some gut-wrenching moments in those qualifiers where we had to watch teams right on the bubble have those early fights that otherwise we wouldn't have seen. So it's a good point to make. I wonder if they're feeling the pressure, because when you're on the big stage, all the lights are on you, everyone's watching. That's where the true champions show up.
Yeah, and listen, players crumble when this kind of situation is on, right? Now you're being tossed into the heat here. We're ready for some suspenseful situations to go down. And again, who walks away with day one is going to be the one that sets him up, right? You really want the momentum coming in. Day one is so important. I think it's very much the most crucial part of this whole thing here.
It is, but we don't have to ask any longer who is going to start off strong, who is going to kick this tournament off, and who is going to jump into the lead as we have game number 1 of day 1 of the finals underway. Like we just touched on, there's going to be 6 games here tonight and 6 games tomorrow at the same time. And already we're getting kind of eyes on what's going on here. We've got Gustos' team landing on the edge. They're going to go for that slurp truck, which is awesome. Guaranteed shield off the bat. Doesn't look like a very strong drop spot they're going for, Monster, but NA East FNCS victors reverse 2K Day and Miro last season had that same drop spot, so I like they're going there as well. I'm seeing some other names in the feed. I'm kind of looking at who's dropping where, and no huge surprises. We have Jinx, Alec, and Worthy, uncontested Dirty Dogs. One thing that I do have to point out, and potentially this was something if you were paying attention on social media, we do not have Repulse, God, Forbes, or Tyrax in game 1. Unfortunately, Forbes is having some technical difficulties. That's why you're seeing Misty Meadows, uncontested Reckless team coming in. I'm pretty sure they're just doing that knowing they didn't see them. Look at the arrows move around, Monster. They're just 100% making sure that they aren't contested. But as I say, that Cypher in the top right, CLR hard worker, picks up an elimination on the bridge.
Yeah, that's a big way to set things off. They actually have 2 already picking players off of their rotate, and that's what happens when you battle for these shambles routes, right? You want to alpha up for these draw spots, maybe play for the slurp truck. You know, it's a double-edged sword here. If you don't land on the weapon, right, because there's only a few there, you will be starting to fall behind here. So way to kick things off for themselves, a couple elims here, and they have the entire Salty Tower to themselves.
Yeah, I'm looking at this map, Monster. This is a very spread out map. That's the only team that was really contesting or anywhere near each other. Everything else on this map is uncontested. Everyone's found their shambles route except for, I was about to mention that, I noticed there was a few extra people at Pleasant. So Pleasant looking like it's probably the only POI so far here today contested. It'll be interesting to see if Repulse's team gets into next game, whether we see Reckless, which is obviously our reboot round winners, kind of vacate Misty. Maybe they understand, because I'm not just saying it because they're the reboot round winners. We've seen reboot round winners do phenomenal things in the past. I'm just saying because it's Repulse's drop spot, there's a reason it's been uncontested every single week they've been playing in. And interesting enough, I talked about Pleasant being contested. It looks like Rip and Crip are happy to get out of here and not fighting Pleasant, just taking the bit of loot they have and going to the bridge. This is really interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great spot to rotate into, but they're going to get spotted out here by Zedox, and now trying to work with one another to go ahead and back it up here. This is going to be a clash of sorts, but no, Zedox doesn't necessarily want to take this. But remember, Storm Surge will be an issue for teams, right? These are situations where if you're Zedox and your trio's not near you, which is Sayo Bath in there, you should still go for the tags, in my opinion, here.
Yeah, I think you still need to get tags, and that's going to be the issue with this. We've got Storm Surge lobbies right now. These are the stacked best of the best players in OCE. They're going to show up, and they're going to want to start a little bit slow. No one usually shows up going full aggression to start. Even for the players like Jinx, who've already got 3 FNCS victories under their belt, I'm sure they're feeling a bit nervous. They're going to come out, they're going to test the waters, right? No one dives straight in these kind of situations. Dip the toes in, see if it's warm, is it cold, where's everybody going, who's on my rotate path, how stacked the game's going to be, how does high ground look. So at the same time, I think Surge is going to be a huge issue this first game for a lot of players.
Yeah, Storm Surge definitely does end up being the demise for most teams, especially when you come in underprepared or you just don't really realize how spread out players are. And the way this map in particular is already kind of diced out, players have good distancing between one another. So if you're at a major POI like this, I feel like you're just going to be late to the rotate, late to the punch when it comes into making it to the new zone, especially when it lands on top of you like it has for this team here inside of the retail row.
you get the zone. Sometimes it is a double-edged sword. I don't know. We'll have to see how they play it out. Retail Row is a drop spot that had a lot of issues last FNCS for OC. We had big names battling over it, fighting over it. I don't know. There's not really one drop spot I'd kind of pegged so far, Monsters. We've seen a lot of the storylines come out of, or a lot of drama around it, and I'm so intrigued, and I'm so excited to see a map that was this clear. I know you want to see people contest, right? You want to see that action early on, but seeing a map where so many people have those scavenger routes planned out, and everyone is clearly in the community discussed or figured out where they're dropping, which I think is a testament to how good OC's practice scene is. It's going to lead to some ridiculous games. We've only had 2 eliminations so far, and it's the 2 we saw at the very start on this bridge. That is it. No one else has gone down yet. These games are going to be insanely stacked, but as the day goes on, as tomorrow, as the games go by, that's when I'm expecting people to change it up, because that's when you got to pick up the pace. But starting off, OC has done their homework.
Yeah, definitely. It's that slow, menacing pace. It's that grand final stage. You can feel the tension in the air between every single engagement. And all of these shots that get connected with right now are definitely one step closer to securing victories here, because these tags, with how many players are alive, with how little interactions have happened, everyone's going to be neck and neck in a race, if you will, to take a box fight or to find some kind of tags, desperately as the clock ticks on.
And that's what's going to be interesting. Those teams that have the experience, I'm looking at teams like Jinx's team, like Volx's team, like our caster picks, to get their damage early and set up away from these teams. They've been playing an OC for a while. They know there's going to be some players in here who are nervous, who don't have the same level of experience they do, and those are the players you have to be the most scared of. If they set up on your wall and they're setting up to get in for their Storm Surge, I've said it time and time again on the broadcast, don't like to call anyone out, but if you're box fighting for your Storm Surge, you've done something wrong. And I guarantee I would put so much money on it, Monster. We're going to see somebody box fighting for their Surge in the next few minutes.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? You said it. You're doing something wrong. The preparation isn't quite there. Every trio we've tuned in with so far hasn't had one of those exceptional loadouts. Like, look at the medium ammo here. You have something to work with. You just don't have a lot. And that's the story for most of these trios right now. Kind of just trying to put something together.
Yeah, and this is interesting. Pace, Remy, and Spraz. We've seen a lot of conflict with them around the teams at Caddy. They've been dropping the weather station, doing the Misty Meadows split around that side of things. I was going to say, they have to be careful of Tekmar's team that's down below, who did actually get Caddy corners, as we see Kazuki, DJ, and Chris. And this is an interesting team right now, right up on the edge of Hunter's Haven. This is a team that does have a little bit more of that experience. Like I said, setting up in a good spot with big sightlines for Storm Surge. And you're going to hear us talk about that a lot tonight. So I'll take this moment to explain it a little bit for you guys at home. Not going to break it down to full detail, but it's very simple. It is just a threshold of damage that teams have to get above. If you're the team that's done the least amount of damage in the lobby and there's too many players alive at a certain zone, we'll tell you which ones they are when they're coming, they will have to deal damage to be above that threshold. And that's why you see players doing this, setting up for damage tags on players they're clearly not going to eliminate, but you need to be active. That's why it exists as a mechanic, as a feature. You don't want teams just getting to center zone, boxing up in metal, and just sitting there doing nothing. It forces them to be active, and it truly shows you who is the best of the best, who can manage their material, manage their rotates, manage their ammo, get damaged along the way, not get headshot sniped. Like, you know what I mean? It just adds so much to it, Monster. As you see players like this, Tekmar take a big base early on, which is fantastic, but have they done enough damage to do this? There's not a lot of players around them.
Yeah, and just to further elaborate, what does this mean for the player? It's a different kind of Fortnite. If you're not preparing in the competitive and or scrim scene for these kind of situations, you're going to come in and it's going to feel overwhelming when the number kicks on. Everyone knows what to do, but no one really understands how to prepare for it unless you put yourself in preparation phase. This team here, a team that I don't really know much of, I'll be honest, they seem like they're in full-on preparation mode. High ground, big tower, looking at teams, making their rotates, finding their tags. That is the ideal situation to be in.
Yeah, right now, Puma's team, same thing as well. I mean, I don't know too much about this team coming into it as well, but I'm going to start paying attention because they've set up really, really well. Clearly been putting in the practice, putting in the game knowledge, knowing where they need to set up for their Storm Surge tags so they're able to get them. And we talked about it. Timmy said it in the pre-show as well. There's a couple of big teams that didn't make it into this. I'm looking mostly at Slayer's team and Zalka's team. They both fell short in their qualifying weeks, in their heats. They fell short in the reboot rounds, and now they're not here. So we're going to see some of those names and some of those teams step up that we don't know a lot about. But I talked about this before. Our first ever Season X Trio FNCS for OC OCE, the team that came in last place to qualify, the 33rd team, I believe it was Minkin, Hilo, and Gancho. I hope I've got that right because we're going back a long way. They managed to come first in the grand finals. The team that qualified in last, Monster. So you can't count anyone out.
Yeah, I think the only other time we saw that might have been like Teak in a DreamHack Grand Finals or something crazy like that. Those last place qualification marks. It just goes to prove that it doesn't matter. If you can make it to a final stage, you're very much worthy of taking home the entire thing. Sometimes you just need a little luck, right? A little zone favor.
Yeah.
Maybe the wrong team to come across you. So many different things can factor into your victory. But again, for FNCS Finals, it just proves you got the skill, that's for sure. You've made it this far.
Yeah, and I'm talking about, like, I was talking about names, up-and-comers and people you haven't heard about. As I see Jarlan, Zora, and Squeak set up on the hill next to Fresh, Rel, and Nubatoon. So big names here. As you can see, these are the biggest of the biggest here as well. Absolute competitive pedigree. Fresh obviously falling into that content creator kind of, bucket. And recently, I feel like he's broken out of that. He's been putting in more practice as anyone as Rivley, Clean, and Apolox go down here to Basil, Vortex, and Jace. As I say that, though, it looks like they went down to Basil. Vortex is still up, but Jace is gone. So they're going to have to hit the reboot onto Jace to get him back up. And that's one of those teams I've been talking about to surprise a lot of players here and have a big game. I noticed from that early map shot, though, Monster, Fresh, Rel, and Nubatoon out of Holly Hedges, getting that Rainbow Rentals Viking split like they like. They're getting it all to themselves. And game one, they had a llama as well. So I'm excited to see how this team goes here because as fan favorites, they did struggle a little bit in their qualifying weeks. I was going to say Fresh has been putting in the hours into scrims, honestly practicing harder than I've seen him practice since possibly before World Cup days, but this kind of season, things didn't come together as much. They've just kind of slid through in each week, but I want to see him show up on the big stage. If anyone's not nervous, it's probably Fresh. My man is calm, cool, and collected at all times.
And these teams we're jumping in with right now, though, they're setting up for fights, and they're setting up early. These are squads that know they're going to be below the surge potentially here.
Below.
And they're trying to get to it before the surge actually closes in. So already, and this is the worst case scenario now for a team like Basso and Vortex, who have already lost Jace God, and they're above the surge. And look, they're trying to distance themselves away. You do not want to be next to a team that needs surge. Not this early, especially when they're trying to take this fight extended.
Oh, they need to get out of this. Like we said, this is the riskiest team to be around right now. A team that is desperate for surge. You've done everything. I want to say everything right. They have 3 eliminations on the board. They wiped that whole trio. They lost Jace in the process, but they're fine. They're happy to rotate right now. If it wasn't for this team behind them pressuring them for Storm Surge, they'd be in. They'd be sitting pretty. And that's why I talked about this as a feature. It's a mechanic implemented by Epic Games to create these fights. Unfortunately, I guarantee Vortex's team right now not too happy about it because it's a team that hasn't done their preparation that now has the potential to really hurt their chances this game as Basil and Vortex have to run away and use all their material to disengage from a team that is now in Storm trying to fight them for Storm Surge. Box, Peaksguard, and HVT are just committing absolute cardinal sins of competitive Fortnite right now, Monster.
This is the equivalent of being contested at a drop spot. Like, you hate to be contested, right? And then a drawn out one. This is even worse than that because you're already situated. You're just trying to do your thing coming into late game, and these guys have to fight. So it's a worst case scenario for them. It's a nightmare situation. Even their Vortex not having those opportunities to break the bouncers, they just have, they're kind of laying it out for them to get chased down.
Yeah, right now, this is not the situation. HVT's team has a decent loadout, but they're still 93 below. They're trying to hit these shots, and this is just, again, I talked about, if you're box fighting for your surge, you've done something wrong. If you're storm fighting for your surge, you've done everything wrong. You have literally done everything wrong to lead up to this point, and unfortunately, it is going to be kind of, taking a big toll on one of our favorite teams here, Basil, Vortex, and Jace, to do well, as we see Nep in the top right as well, Aspect and Krypton trying to take a fight as well, and they're only 76 above. Now only 54 above, so that is also a Storm Surge motivated fight as we have 81 players alive. It needs to go below 70, so as you see that damage that's now breaking down onto HVT's team, 25 damage is going to go down every 5 seconds for this team right now, and they're just going to keep getting hit until one of them goes down, or they can get above that Storm Surge threshold, or 7 more players are out of this game, which is not going to happen anytime soon.
Well, look at this. Best player is going to jump right back into it. So HVT is going to find his teammate's loot, who went down to the Storm. And now, again, getting held out here, possibly by... Yes, it is going to be the same team that they were chasing out, which is Basso and company. But no, there's another team off to the side. It's the GEM boys. It seems like they're looking inside right now, trying to put in some shots. Fury Skits is going to find some as well. GLM Osiris here and Daneth. And look at that. easy free picks on the edge of the storm. I was going to say for Forbidden, I wanted them to look back and continue firing back when Basso and them were getting chased. I wish they just put down a couple tags. Those would have been such free elims.
And we have Muzz, Speedy, and Luda right now. This is Timmy's pick coming into this. Two of the favorites as well coming into it. They are really looking fantastic. Timmy shouted out Speedy's insane IGL abilities with Luda and Muzz's ridiculous mechanics. And honestly, couldn't say it better there. It is that ideal trio of the brain and then the two muscles as well to be able to fight it out. But they're in a good spot right now. They kind of rotated. This is an interesting first zone, pulling more towards that southeast to east section. It's going to go around the mountains at caddy corners. It's going to favor a team like Luda's team, which has been dropping Lazy Lake uncontested. Zone heading towards them. Normally that can be an issue for a lot of teams, but we talk about teams doing preparation coming into this. Luda, Speedy, and Muzz have probably done almost more preparation than any other team. Some of the hardest workers in the community, really figuring out their game plans. As here we go. This is an interesting team for me, Monster. Suns, Cork, and Tui. It's a team that, I don't know, they haven't really been in the big talking points, but anyone in OC knows of this team and knows the potential they have. But because they've been dropping that Hydro Dam for the RPG and they've been contested week after week, game after game, we haven't been able to see what they can do when they're uncontested. 2 eliminations on the board for Tui. Maybe they're still contested, but they're set up in a good spot. And I have to imagine they've got their Surge, they've got 9 rockets in the RPG, and they've still got good loot. They're looking fantastic for an upset here.
Yeah, definitely, especially considering, like you said, those 9 rockets, meaning that they didn't even dig into the rocket pool because they're still capped out, right? They're still very much comfortable. Not only that, they have a pretty decent spot here, a nice position on the crevices of this mountain, low below line of sights for other trios. So one of those spots that you don't really get targeted, and keeping that low profile is going to go a long way if you can bite into the later stages of this round here. Coming into zone 4, this is the mid game. This is the make or break time for most trios. This is where we start approaching that 50+ man surge. This is where teams crumble, and you couldn't ask for a better zone. Honestly, it's going to play center. It's going to play pretty much dead center for everyone that's there early, and that's the biggest mountains available.
Yeah, and you'll notice there's teams that have done their preparation. Jinx, Alec, and Worthy are set up in a beautiful spot on that mound right there. They knew if it pulled that way, or they pretty much went center. They know that just, you got to play the odds. If you're going center of the zone, chances are, even if you get a max distance pull, you're at least still somewhat close to it. Jinx, Alec, and Worthy in a really good spot now to also try and get half zone. I talked about the preparation that goes into things like for Muzz, Luda, and Speedy's team. They're in a great spot on the edge to try and hold these teams, but they need to make their way up on top of that mound. They're not in the next zone, but this is our 4th zone. 5th is going to be that, I want to say, illustrious half. It goes half into the storm, half into the current zone, and that is the zone you want to get. The success rate of teams that have half, especially on high ground, is massive. It means that you don't have to rotate through these congested players because there's 70 people alive right now, Monster. We got to the storm surge threshold and then nobody dropped. Everyone's rotating, everyone's trying to make endgame, and this is just going to make the next storm surge even more difficult to try and get above.
Yeah, just notable names still amongst the chaos here inside the mix. Will, Ronan, and Eshes still in this fight right now. You definitely saw Fresh Rel, Nubatoon. Here's a look at
Sync, Sorif, and
Fishy,
Volks.
right? Sorif, exactly, and Volks here. They have a nice position as well in this mountain. The fact that they can even look down through a floor edit is beautiful here. But they're underneath the surge. They have to get active.
They need, oh, never mind. It jumps back up. Storm Surge kind of playing tricks on it as well. It's just calculating up there. And now this one, I think, is correct, though. 1 above the Squeaks challenge. Zora, as Jarlan, I'm pretty sure, gets hit gets hit by Faulty. That's probably going to be a headshot snipe, I'm imagining. As we now tune in with Zans, we've got Raikou taking fights. We're just tuning to so many people all trying to make their way up this mountain. And look at this southern side right now. Look at this kind of southwestern section. There are so many teams here as Sorif, Volks, and Sync take some heavy damage. My team, my prediction to win it all this weekend, looking okay. They're above the surge. They have meds, but they're taking damage they didn't need to take, trying to hold teams on the rotate when they already have their surge. You got to look for those points, though. 2 eliminations on offer as Luda right now getting some big shots off with that big boy epic tactical shotgun, but I think takes more damage than what he gave out, though, unfortunately, from another team spraying in. And look at all of this focus on this edge right now.
Yeah, this is an extended fight now. Alec is going to get knocked in the feet too. Who was it? We'll have to find out, but that means trades are being made here for big names and small alike. BMP already down a member, no Kripa here. Rip just trying to play together with this trio right now, figure things out. Here's Suns, Cork, and Tui. We said, what can they do? They're doing really good work here. They have someone up against the ropes, and remember, they have the best loadout you can ask for in the game. We have a North Pool on the zone, though. That's going to favor players like Fresh, Rel, Nubatoon, who were just coming in. It's going to be working against all those other teams, though, that rotated in on the dead side.
And I think it was Jinx, Alec, and Worthy a little bit off that one, but I see Worthy also getting a knock on to Sio right now. We have Mania, unfortunately, holding things down here. Can maybe get the revive. Mania, someone who impressed us massively in their heat. Someone who kind of had a lot of pressure on himself to perform, has been around for a long time, but hasn't had that big moment. As I see Jinx and Worthy go down in the feed, our FNCS champions are either playing it as a solo for Alec or the whole trio is down. That is not looking good. Alec is gone, Monster. I mean, that's a huge upset first game here. Again, 12-game format, but I mean, our reigning champs are going to need it. That is not how you want to start off a tournament.
Yeah, definitely a rough one there, considering they pulled that zone number 4, so something didn't go right on the rotate on in, and that's the nature of Fortnite, though. Mountain to mountain, traversing these kind of valleys, these gaps. If you don't have bouncers, or you get fried out the sky just for making those moves, it's going to be rough. Here's Bansis, though. Talk about lobby focus and whatnot. Someone's going to sneak into that tarp, hit that shotgun shot, and already, I think that's 2 down here on this trio.
Luda, Speedy, and Muzz looking fantastic. We're tuning in a team after team who's just, you know, kind of going through tarps. And we see Vortex and Basil are still alive here. And oh my gosh, maybe for not too much longer. A little bit of caster curse there. I talk about it. But they did fantastically to be a player down, rotating away from that team on the edge. But just look how in control Luda, Muzz, and Speedy are here. This just looks like they have everything going their way. Big open base. They have their damage. They're all full health, extra shield, good shotguns. They are looking so strong coming into this endgame. Unless something goes wrong, but they've got other big teams to contest with. I saw Sync, Volks, and Sorif also, all 3 alive, looking healthy. I think the same for Fresh's team. So there's some big names in here to upset it, but game 1 is not disappointing. Everyone we expected to be in it, maybe except for Jinx and a couple other teams, are looking fantastic. Look at Freshwell and Nubitoon. Pepper's popped, full health, front side of zone. They're looking fantastic.
Yeah, not to mention high ground still being held by that unknown team that we saw early on. Jay Vano, Puma, Mr. Tassie, and they pulled the first big moving zone too. So there's a fresh squad up on height. Will a dark horse walk away with these 12 days of games, or 2 days, 12 games of competition? Who knows, man? And look, there they are. As you get the nice wide shot, they are holding things down. And Giovanno, such a great spot to be in, especially if you're coming into this and trying to make a big name for yourself.
I mean, it's pulling off the mountain as well, so players dropping down. They've really got to play that high ground well to make sure the teams don't wait back for them to go for it as Daneth gets taken down on the low ground. I talked about how we have Basil, Jason, Vortex, one of the more notable low ground teams. Honestly, haven't seen that too much from Squeaks, Jarlan, and Zora, but I love this from them. 3 players who have insane fighting mechanics, some of the best in the region, have been competitive pedigree, trying to make their way through low ground, could do phenomenal things as Tui's gone out of here, but Sun's holding on to that RPG, putting down so much damage. As I say that, Jarlan goes down in the feed to Skits. Suns is going down, going to try and maybe get a shot onto Luna. Has the wall, but I don't think wants to make the edit. No, Suns is playing to try and be a little bit safer. Luna's playing aggressive here, trying to push forward. Doesn't even know the Suns has that RPG to potentially turn on them, but 16 teams, 35 players. I see Volks in the feed, Rel in the feed. The big names are here. Who's going to be able to pull it off, as Muzz is not looking fantastic?
Yeah, all of a sudden we saw Muzz and them looking really healthy, and now losing all shield. Here's Sunstow making for the fight. And they've been using this RPG a little differently than we expected. Looking down at the ground. Muzz is going to get knocked there, though, on the rotate. So that's 1 down. Speedy's right there trying to play into that, seeing if he can make the save here. But Raptor, Oatly, and Prizzy already at 4 eliminations, playing upset, that mid-ground layer, being that dominant spot. This is what Timmy called out. It's those mid-ground teams that will walk away with this tournament at the end of it, because they're going to be picking up all the elims.
Yeah, right now, and you got Muzz getting those shields back off, so it looked like things were looking a little bit sketchy for Speedy, Luna, and Muzz, but right now they've got time to get their loot back up. I see Suns getting wounded in the feed, getting lit up as a duo. They can't stay on the front side. They've fallen back. They're putting like big damage onto Muzz, though. That was a huge RPG. That team falls. Luna takes down Cork, Fresh in the feed as well. Spraz taking down Squeaks, taking that entire team out of this one. Luna's on the low ground, trying to do big things. It's going to be who's getting these eliminations, as honestly, Fresh, Rel, and Nubitoon just on the front side of zone, getting eliminations look fantastic. My pick as well, Volks putting down the big damage, but they don't have the firepower. I'm seeing all these players with RPGs, big shotguns. Sync, Volks, and Luna don't have the firepower, but they're doing fantastic.
Yeah, they definitely managed to bounce their way back. Siphon being what's carrying them here. Sync on the other side, though. A man down. Volks needs some backup. Volks is on the run, but Sync is still clutching up here, even with no HP. And now it's all up to Volks. What can he do? 2 elims already, top 8. Placement. This is where you get it all. You need to out-survive these teams fresh down low with no HP either. It's a close one. He's going to find out Bathan. That's a great find, and now he actually gets the material.
Volks versus Fresh Runner is a big one, I say, against Fresh. Fresh drops out, and Luda, Speedy, and Muzz drop down. 3 players, 3 teams alive, 7 players. They are a full trio right now. I have to imagine probably the only full trio in this, unless it's a 3v3v1. It is right now. Vortex has lasted this entire time as a duo, and here we have a 3v3. Raptor, Oatly, Prizzy on the high ground, Luda, Muzz, and Speedy on the low ground. Luda's got that RPG, trying to reload it, going to try and do something big. Maybe we even see a bounce pad up. I don't know. This could even potentially go to a heal off. 30 seconds left. It is all down to Luda, Speedy, and Muzz to try and hold off this high ground domination. They can play this one out. They have the potential to win it. Luda goes for it. He goes for the RPG up. They drop down. It's a shotgun battle. Shotgun to shotgun. Prizzy gets Luda. He's on 13 health. Only has this. He has the health advantage right now. They're dropping down. Muzz is trying to fight back. It's just Speedy and Oatly head to head. Oatly has the health advantage, and they come out with the huge victory royale. 12 elimination victory royale from a team that, honestly, we haven't talked that much about, Monster, but we should. They are a fantastic team. Oatly has been popping off on socials right now, in Arena, and now in the first game of FNCS. What a start for those guys.
Yeah, definitely way to kick it off. You saw that 12 eliminations. And again, they didn't even have high ground for free because Puma, Javano, and Tussie there were holding it for the majority of that. So they wrangled it right out of their grips, right? And not only that, they had the high ground pulling all the way through. So it was a battle for.
But honestly, I have to give shout outs to Vortex as well. We saw them as a duo getting fought in Storm for a team that needed Storm Surge, and he managed to come top 3, which we know is that big 6-point swing. So we're going to have to throw it to the analyst, see if there's anything else we missed, because that was an absolutely insane first game here for OCFNCS Finals.
Thank you so much, Casters. Exactly right. It seemed like it kind of came all the way down to shambles, and that squad fight with Raptor, Oatly, Frizzy versus Speedy, Muzz, and Luda, that was just, we couldn't have asked for anything better, guys. But Timmy, this question's for you, because we're discussing a little bit, but Surge felt so influential in this map, number 1, because before it hit, it meant it was so important for people to manage, because I think we had about 70 people up.
Yeah, we had 70 alive as fourth was about to start closing, which is very unusual to see. And what it means is that proactive leaders of the team, so in-game leaders, IGLs, those are the ones that are going to be rewarded. If you've got your team to a good position and you've sorted your surge early, that's when you're going to, be rewarded. So that we saw Mr. Tassie, Puma, we saw those guys rewarded for a really, really good set of mid games because they got to a hill early, they got their surge sorted, and then they can have high fallout.
Yeah, that's right. You'll see it here in a moment, but actually you just saw it kind of come through how 70 teams still alive in that Zone 3 was absolutely insane, but then it really became the Speedy Muzz Looter show. At this point in time, they had 1 elimination, and note, they ended up with about 11 elims. It was an insane finish for them. Vortex somehow managed to kind of rat and solo his way to a very, very solid finish with 6 elims for his team and a top 5 finish as well. But then, this is where they popped off. Despite getting flanked and actually being put in shambles by an RPG, Speedy, Looter, and Muzz are able to recover. They're able to get the Siphon high impact frags that they needed to bounce back into a second place finish. That was an absolutely insane game. Ozzy said it perfectly. Monster said it well. Crazy game, crazy start here. But in the end, it was Raptor, Prizzy, and Oatly who were able to come out on top with a huge 12 elimination game.
It was really entertaining for me to watch as well, because at one point, right, we were kind of just wondering, how did they survive? And then, like you said, just breaking it down, I don't know if there was like a little bit of luck here, a little bit of skill, not really sure. I feel like it was a bit of both, but match number 1 kind of sets the precedent for the rest of the day. And it's already looking very, very promising, it feels, Timmy.
Yes, but, you got to think about the teams that we lost along the way. We've got Alec and Worthy, who went down, at half-half. We're going to see what they can do for the rest of the day. But, teams we haven't talked about, other teams that we saw at the end there, Culture, Brezzo, and Luna we saw at the end. We also saw Mr. Tassie on height. Can he keep on going with that? We're going to have a look at the standings and see what we can look at here, Fallout. But, really good first game. We're going to see what happens for the rest of the day.
Let's go ahead and bring up these standings and then Fallout. One question before we do dive in through these standings. Again, it's kind of that point about eliminations that we were making. How important is it that, players focus on this?
It's insane. It's so important. You always say it. High ground, yes, it'll win you a game. It'll get you placement points, but mid ground, low ground will win you championships. Guess what? It is Championship Friday here. We're kicking off with our grand finals, and eliminations proved to be correct. As you see, Basil, Vortex, and Jace in third place with 8 eliminations that they're able to pick up. Rapta, Prizzy, and Oatleave. They're dropping Slurpee Swamps by themselves. That's such a really great drop spot. Uncontested at Slurpee because we know that they've really conditioned the region to take that spot. Muzzlooter and Speedy dropping Lazy Lake with the first place finish as well. Very solid from them. But then right behind in fourth place, Fresh, Rel, and Nubatoon stand up with the huge 7 elimination game. And then, of course, Pumpkin, Cyper, and Suns looking very, very good. Elim's really proved to be correct here as we take